the New York Philharmonic and I are delighted to welcome you again to our series. Today we're going to be hearing some good old-fashioned ragtime and watching it move from Tin Pan Alley into the concert hall.
Presenting Leonard Bernstein and the New York Philharmonic. Brought to you by Lincoln, with classic beauty and unexcelled craftsmanship, and the Continental Mark IV, the most distinguished motor car of our times.
Now, if this were a program called Name That Noise or something, and you had to identify that musical excerpt, you might have a bit of trouble. But let's say you've never heard it before, and there are probably two things you could tell about it. First, that it's serious concert music in the intricate way it develops, in its large-scale orchestral concept. And second, that it's probably American, owing to certain elements in it that remind us of jazz. Well, the excerpt actually was from Aaron Copland's Third Symphony, which is very symphonic and very jazzy. Now, offhand, you'd wonder how two such strange bedfellows ever got together. Concert music always carries with it the connotation of sobriety, spiritual uplift, deadly seriousness, while jazz connotes relaxation, improvisation, shirt sleeves, in short, fun. But they can go together, these two strangers, and often do. Today we're going to look at two prime examples of this mating and try to discover how such an odd marriage came to be. At the turn of this 20th century of ours, the great European tradition of symphonic music had reached a point of sheer exhaustion. It had been building and building for over a century, from Mozart to Beethoven to Brahms to Wagner, each one adding something to the size of the orchestra, to the length of the music, to the weight of the emotional statements, until by 1900, there was Mahler overpowering them all with sounds like this. How much bigger could music get? It had to stop somewhere or bust. And the only remedy seemed to be to throw it all overboard and start a new development, find fresh material, new devices, atonality, quarter tone music, whole tone scales, old Greek scales, anything. Only not that same Mozart to Mendelssohn to Mahler triple play that the Germans had sewed up so tightly for more than 100 years. One of the strongest attractions for the composers of this new anti-symphonic generation was the lure of the exotic, the far away, the Far East, the Near East, Africa, anywhere, as long as it wasn't Germany. And perhaps the most exotic attraction of all these was this very peculiar sound. Ragtime, they called it then. A half-breed music bred in New Orleans out of African drumming and French military marches and Polish polkas. What did it have that was so enticing? The blue notes, the syncopations, the trombone smears? No, the thing that made it irresistible was that it had life. It was fresh and vital. It swung, which was just what the doctor ordered for the jaded European musician who could no longer digest the heavy German cooking of Wagner, Reger, Pfitzner, and company. This was spicy, light, effervescent. This was Sal Hepatica. Well, by 1912, ragtime was in solid. There was a steady stream of rags flowing out of Tin Pan Alley. Look at some of these. The sunflower rag, that demon rag, the fellow with the cello rag, that fellow with the cello, that puzzlin' rag, another rag, the madhouse rag, that fussy rag by the author of Dat Lovin' Rag. Well, now let's look at one of the great ones. In fact, the first one that ever appeared, which is called the Maple Leaf Rag. Sounds like this. Now, just what is it that makes that a rag? Well, first of all, it's a march, as you can hear from the accompaniment. But over that accompaniment, there's nothing anyone ever marched to before. Bright, jolly, syncopated figures that make you want to dance, not march. And the essential color, as you hear, is that of the honky-tonk piano. It couldn't sound better if it were played by the greatest orchestra on earth. It belongs to the bar room. As far as its form is concerned, well, it's the same as any march, with its contrasting trio or middle section. In this case, it goes like this. And that's all there is to it. There's no hint of blue notes or of any of the jazz paraphernalia that was later to become so important. Just pure, naive, high spirits. Now imagine how sweetly all this fell upon the ears of these new European composers, especially the ones in Paris who were so eagerly seeking fresh, non-Wagnerian waters, like Erik Satie, Debussy, Ravel, Martineau, Milhaud, Tanzmann, Stravinsky. They all grabbed at this new exotic tonic, drank it up, injected it artificially into their own personal styles and vocabularies, and out came music that was closer to the Moulin Rouge than to the Musikfreunde-Gesellschaft. For example, here's a ragtime from Satie's ballet Parade, which is just about 2 steps beyond the Maple Leaf Rag. It could almost be an authentic original, except every so often there appears some complexity or unexpected turn that reveals the hand of a sophisticated European composer. See what I mean? Couldn't be Tin Pan Alley, nohow. But this is nothing compared to the sophisticated treatment the rag got from some European composers. Stravinsky, for instance, turned out no less than 3 ragtimes, one more complicated than the other, and none of them even vaguely comprehensible in New Orleans or in Tin Pan Alley, but still born of ragtime. Here's a bit from Stravinsky's Ragtime for 11 Instruments. And try to imagine as you hear it what fun Stravinsky must have had writing it back in 1918. now entering the domain of what is called serious music. Not just a foxtrot here, a bunny hug there. This was meant to be first-class music, several cuts above the level of sheer entertainment, and this was still only the beginning.
And now, Les Tremaine for Continental.
Remember when George Gershwin wrote his smash musical, Of Thee I Sing? That was over 20 years ago. When Cornelius Vanderbilt's Ranger beat England's Endeavour II. Gone with the Wind made its spectacular premiere in Atlanta. And in 1939, car-conscious America caught its first glimpse of a true classic.
Look at that.
I've never seen anything like it.
There isn't anything like it. That's a Continental. Someday I'm going to have a car like that.
And this young man did not forget his promise to himself. For when success made it possible, he became one of the very few to experience the satisfaction of owning the finest motor car it is humanly possible to build, the Mark IV Continental. Here at a glance is a truly distinctive motor car, born of the classic line and form that is Continental's great heritage. One car whose beauty will outlast passing fads, just as it always has. And all Continentals offer features found in no other cars. Even the convertible has the Continental safety glass rear window that raises and lowers from the front seat. It's the only convertible in the world that has it. A turn of the key tells you of the smooth, silent power under that long, straight hood. Power that puts you in complete command of the road. While in motion, Continental reflects great beauty from every angle. In the striking simplicity of its grille, in its long, sweeping silhouette, in every aspect of its superbly styled contours. Here truly is a modern masterpiece of automobile design, the Mark IV Continental.
By now, we've reached the exciting 1920s, and the word ragtime was a thing of the past. In its place stood the blazing new word jazz, which had evolved from ragtime, but was far beyond it. It had many more subtleties, more Negro influences like those blue notes we did not find in ragtime, much more variety of tone color, being essentially music for orchestra rather than solo piano. Also, it was more involved, more sophisticated, less square and ricky-ticky. All these changes are reflected in the music of those European composers who were still avidly drinking at this exotic American well. Only now, instead of a ragtime by Satie, you got a Charleston by Martineau, or a shimmy by Hindemith, a foxtrot by Ravel. Out of all this has come one real masterpiece, one full-length, fully developed jazz work, which had such character and originality that even today it sounds as fresh as it did when it was first written in 1923. It's a ballet called The Creation of the World by the brilliant French composer Darius Milhaud.